What's going on, guys? So Kenney Conwell, I want to record this video because I have a real estate property in North Carolina, and then I have my own property here in Georgia. I'm forming a specific LLC for that real estate property to own. So I'm transferring the deed out of my name into an LLC's name. And then what I'm gonna do, once I have that real estate property in that LLC, is gonna pay that LLC, be subject to the LLC, all that stuff be subject to the LLC. And if should something happen at that rental property, then they're gonna sue the LLC and not necessarily me personally. Now here's the other thing. What I'm also gonna do, because that LLC is its own entity, is I'm gonna have that LLC be owned by not me personally, but another corporation that I control. So real estate property owned by an LLC, owned by another corporation, and then that corporation can actually leverage that LLC as an asset, because that LLC is viewed to have an asset, a real asset. Let's just say this real estate property is worth $480,000. Well, technically, assets minus liabilities, if there's a mortgage out, that LLC is really worth about $400,000. Now this company has another $400,000 worth of assets that it owns and it owns and technically controls. And then you, as the corporate owner, would more than likely want to either issue shares of stock of your corporation to a trust, and or you are the number 100% shareholder. So that's a unique thing about the corporation, right? You can issue shares. So if you issue shares to another entity, typically that entity can be a person, it could be a trust, it could be another LLC, but it will make sense for that corporation's shares to be owned by another entity, let's just call it a trust, and it not necessarily be subject to the tax. But without me getting too far in the weeds here, what I'm really saying is don't have your real estate property be owned only by you personally, and then make sure that that LLC is owned by another entity, and then make sure that entity owns that entity, and then have a trust that owns that entity, right? So that way it's like a huge line. It's almost like a web. So should somebody come after you and try to come and sue you, whatever the case is, they're not going to necessarily sue you. You're going to sue that LLC. And then if that LLC doesn't have enough assets, it's only going to be able to come up to the corporation up to a certain amount of assets, limit that liability. And then that corporation doesn't have, it's going to stop with that corporation. But the thing is, you can have multiple LLCs, multiple corporations. You can set up all these different structures and webs as you see fit, because it's real simple to do. You just have to make sure you know what you're doing and you have the correct structure. That being said, when you are getting started in real estate, that same real estate LLC in North Carolina that I'm forming can easily own 2 or 3 other LLCs, or be subject to or take on the risk if I were to get started in Airbnb. So that's another unique thing about the LLC, right? Which is really powerful, it's real flexible. So that LLC can say, hey, look, I want to go get a corporate lease for an apartment complex. And now, not only do I have that lease, that LLC showing a real estate asset, but it also has you can be Airbnb, and then the LLC is subject to the corporate lease and all the liability there, and it's generating cash flow. And again, it's still owned by another company. So this is how you really want to start structuring this stuff, guys. At the end of the day, it's all about tax. So remember, I was saying before, and I'll say it really quickly, that LLC is a flow-through entity. So even if it owns real property, all those profits can be flowing through to another holding company or another trust. Ideally, you want that flowing through either to I wouldn't say yourself individually, but flowing through another company, like your holding company, so to speak, and all the income flows to that holding company. And now you can subject yourself, if it's an INC, now instead of paying out a earned income, you can pay out a dividend, and then depending upon who does or does not own the shares of that stock, then you may or may not even have to issue or distribute profits until you sell that particular company. But let's just say it's owned by a trust. If it's owned by a trust, depending upon how that trust is set up, not a living trust, let's just say it's a revocable private trust that's not subject to the jurisdiction of the IRS, and you issue exchanges between that corporation's profit to that trust, now you completely eliminate tax in this example as well. So I know I said a mouthful, but the point I'm making is you want to make sure that if you're getting started in real estate, you have the correct structure to avoid tax and liability, and you can continue to perpetuate yourself without you being involved.